Unlike many adaptations, Mr. Holmes sees Sir Ian McKellen portraying a much older version of the detective. Long retired to a remote cabin in the English countryside and now in his 90s, this elderly Sherlock Holmes has taken to tending to a small bee colony and teaching a young boy how to use the power of deduction like the world's greatest detective. But as Mr. Holmes reveals the apparently very real man behind the almost mythical figure from all those short stories, we also learn about the mystery behind his final case and how it led to his self-imposed retirement and isolation. Greetings, Cinemaniacs. I'm Cinematico Magnifico of AmoralCrackpot.com, and welcome to the Nightly Chill. Mr. Holmes is directed by Bill Condon, whose filmography includes award-winning fare like 2006's Dreamgirls, the pair of Twilight Breaking Dawn movies, and even the record-breaking cinematic monster from Disney, Beauty and the Beast. And it's interesting how Mr. Holmes as a movie is every bit as strange a mixture of high highs and low lows as Condon's directorial work. And when I say this, I don't mean to come across as if the movie itself is bad, which it isn't by any real means, but it would be safe to say that when the movie is at its best, it's entirely due to Sir Ian McKellen and his portrayal of an aged Sherlock Holmes at two significant periods in the character's life. Otherwise, the movie is generally a flat but charming drama. As the 90-year-old Holmes, the then 75-year-old McKellen puts on a startling performance as a man on the brink of death. There's this persistent uneasiness throughout the present-day scenes, like we're waiting to see Holmes take some inevitable wrong step, stumble, and his bones crumble into a fine powder. But behind this frailty is the spirit of a younger man, one with a mind still much sharper than those around him. Certainly sharper than those around him give him any credit for. And easily the best part of this movie is the relationship that blossoms between Holmes and his housekeeper's young son, Roger, played here by Milo Parker. Milo sees Holmes as every bit the hero that he's always been portrayed as in the stories, movies, and various TV shows. Even Parker's moments of silent adulation come across as genuine as any real moment where a boy meets his childhood hero. And it's the boy's obsession with Holmes' final case that actually introduces the central mystery expected of any Sherlock Holmes movie. This is mostly focused around the strange behavior of a wife who's seemingly fallen into a deep depression and strange behavior following two miscarriages. The mystery and watching it unfold is fun enough, but the real interesting part of these flashback scenes is getting to see McKellen portray a more spirited, livelier version of Holmes. He's effectively playing two distinctly different versions of the classic beloved character. His body language, his speech, it's all uniquely tuned to whatever version of Holmes is on screen at that moment, but both versions still feel like the same man. Oddly enough, there's also two more subplots crammed into a fairly brief 100 minutes. One involves Holmes' relationship with a Japanese admirer and some time spent there in Japan. This is interesting enough, but it mostly feels tacked on until it eventually comes off as contrived. It only has a trivial connection to the main plot and mostly manages to disrupt the flow of everything else. But the fourth plotline revolves around the second mystery of Holmes' slowly dwindling bee population. The bee subplot does tie into the overarching story of a lonely, broken old man finally allowing himself deeper emotional bonds in his old age. Holmes and Milo work together to solve this mystery, with Milo doing the footwork and Holmes handling the majority of the puzzle pieces. This is done so well that any time spent away from these scenes of them together feels misused or wasted. The mystery of Holmes' final case certainly has its charm, and definitely checks off that box where every Sherlock movie has to have one, but it's nowhere near as interesting or engaging. Now, on the one hand, maybe a more straightforward story focused on the 90-year-old Holmes would have worked in the movie's favor, but on the other hand, this would come at the expense of the mystery an audience might expect. Doesn't really matter which one it is, but Condon really needed to pick one and only one. Again, Mr. Holmes isn't a bad movie at all, but it is likely to split its potential audience into two distinct camps. The additional material might prove to be a positive thing, and even alluring to those wanting a story about Holmes' final days as a detective. But for those like me, all of that will likely irritate you to no end with the way it constantly betrays a quieter, better story about loneliness and finding meaning and purpose in one's old age. But regardless of which camp you fall into, so long as you fall into one or the other, I highly recommend you chill with Mr. Holmes. That's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly Chill. As always, this show is brought to you in part by our fans. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe, like, follow, and share. And if you'd like to find even more reviews, or perhaps learn how to support the show, please visit amoralcrackpot.com. Finally, the Nightly Chill is written, voiced, and produced by me, Steve TLVSoE. Agree or disagree with today's review? Let me know however you can. But until next time, y'all need to make like a tree and get out of here.